Iran. A clearer picture is beginning to emerge of the sheer scale of the country's security forces' crackdown on anti-government protests after more Iranians were able to contact the outside world. Even though the internet is still down, more videos of the violence are emerging, with witnesses suggesting the number of victims may be in the thousands. Limited protests are reported to be continuing. Correspondents say it may take a while before the world knows the true scale of the bloodshed that's taken place. President Trump has announced tariffs against countries that trade with Iran. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Laskiewicz. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Laskiewicz, for joining us. Mr. Trump has announced tariffs not against Iran directly, but against countries that trade with Iran, and he did it spur of the moment, seemingly. How effective is that likely to be?
Not really effective, unfortunately. It will have some minor effect, but on the Iranian regime, it'll have no effect at all. It may discourage some people from communicating with Iran. However, the key problem is that if Donald Trump is carrying on encouraging them to the unrest, can he support them? Because otherwise it will end up like the Polish uprising of 1863, where the French emperor did ask the Poles to carry on, but actually did nothing meaningful to help them, which resulted in ever more bloodshed.
And looking at the size and scope of these protests in Iran and the level of defiance and the fact that the protesters seem undeterred, although officials are now saying that they have the situation under control, what do you think we're looking at with these demonstrations in Iran?
Well, quite a lot of people don't want a theocratic regime, but unfortunately a theocratic regime has a monopoly on all the arms in Iran, and therefore the protests, whilst very widespread, will not lead anywhere much. Moreover, the theocratic regime is absolutely certain it is correct and therefore won't change its stance. Unless they get outside help, the unrest will be quelled, just as it was in other areas where you had popular unrests against Russian rule in Georgia and so on.
And talking about outside help, I mean, you touched on this briefly earlier, but a word from you on the American view in all this. President Trump briefed on options for action, while he says the Iranians have made contact and want to negotiate, but he warns that he might act before any talks take place. How important is that American threat of action in this unrest? I mean, would you say the Iranian authorities are worried?
Well, they're certainly worried, but the key problem is, what will it achieve? Unless you've got boots on the ground, it'll just amount to missiling various areas, perhaps killing some government officials, perhaps some people in the government itself, but it's not going to change anything. Ayatollah Khamenei will go into hiding, and therefore, as a result, nothing much will be altered. The key point is, unless either they can give direct help to Iranian rebels, or the Iranian rebels can actually launch a sort of guerrilla war, the unrest will be quelled. And all he's doing, in effect, as I stated, is by encouraging them to carry on rebelling. It's like what happened in 1863 in Poland, where the French emperor encouraged the Poles, but actually did nothing. So there's a great deal more bloodshed to no real end.
And we understand the Pentagon already has assets in place, but of course it could be days before anything happens, depending on what Mr. Trump chooses to do. And of course the assets the US has in the Persian Gulf are all at bases in foreign countries, and there is the question of whether those countries, such as Kuwait, Qatar and the UAE, will allow the US to fly combat aircraft from their home territory for strike missions against Iran.
I don't know whether they will. On the other hand, I'm not sure they've got much choice. If they have huge American bases in their country, they're kind of just as much a hostage to the Americans as the American bases are to the country. So I'm not sure that's the key point. The problem is the flying in and bombing won't actually get anywhere. It won't actually help much unless you can either liberate the country or send arms to guerrillas, then all that happens is you've got increasingly futile protests because they can't actually break through. Moreover, here comes the other key problem. It actually, in some ways, if the regime wins, it will completely destroy any chance of any moderate change. This is not, unless President Trump does something. In fact, the most important thing he has done isn't his at all. It's Elon Musk. It's his Starlink. When the internet went down, they're using Elon Musk's system. So America has helped, but that's not Donald Trump. That's his former colleague.
But then, I mean, Mr. Trump hasn't mentioned anything about any kind of, guerrilla warfare support, if you like, to the people of Iran. I mean, do you think the military option, in the context of what we've seen so far, is the most likely decision the president will take? Because, I mean, he has expressly threatened it, and obviously that means it's on the table, and he clearly feels very good about the operation he undertook in Venezuela, and he seems to feel very good about how he bombed Iran last year. I mean, might that incline him to lean more towards military options?
Yes. But the military options, please note, don't actually lead very far. Yes, he kidnapped the Venezuelan leader, but the same party is still in power there. It's not clear that Venezuela is going to do his bidding at all. Number two, yes, he bombed Iran, but that's specifically to help out Israel. He can do that again. He might even kidnap some government officials, but it won't change the fundamental regime. Like in Venezuela, it hasn't changed. And incidentally, whilst we're at it, it hasn't changed in Iran after the bombings, nor, of course, in many ways in Gaza. Incidentally, is a further point. Without boots on the ground and an absolute capture, all that happens is you go missiling around to no particular end.
However, those attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities last year and the threat of more attacks appear to be moving the Iranians towards negotiations, because, I mean, the country's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, says Tehran is fully prepared for war, but is willing to negotiate, and the Americans say they've contacted them. I mean, the Iranians have contacted the Americans with a view to negotiating, and that a meeting will be set up.
Oh, yes, but negotiating to what end? You see, the Iranians, as far as one can tell, want a nuclear program, and they're committed to the destruction of Israel. And so, in some ways, all these negotiations amount to simply a stalling, a buying of time. Again, what do the Americans really want? Well, they don't want Iran to do a nuclear bomb, but are they actually going to go some way further, which is what they would like, and see the regime overthrown? That seems impossible too, short of an infantry invasion, which is impossible at present anyway. And so therefore the negotiations are just like the Russian and Ukrainian negotiations. They don't actually lead anywhere. Although it's good they're talking. I mean, let's say that. It's good that some sort of negotiations take place, some sort of compromises might be reached, but of nothing of a fundamental nature.
And do you think President Trump is likely to be weighing up how the Iranian people are likely to react, and whether they'll like the fact that the US is supporting them, or whether they'll dislike the fact that the US is attacking their country?
Actually, it will be a mixture of both. As in Venezuela, some people will support the action by the Americans, as in Venezuela, but then there's a further problem. What happens when the action happens, there's no follow-through? That's what happened in Venezuela. Already many people are saying nothing much has changed, including the emigres, who were his greatest supporters. And now what? The same thing happens in Iran. Sure, there'll be people who support him, yes, but then he has to follow through. Follow through to what end? If there's no end, then it merely becomes, if you like, a sort of one-off operation. Nice for his ego, good perhaps to show that America's got the strength, very good action by the military, but no change, no great change.
And of course, the other question is how the Iranian regime might respond. I mean, are they likely to start attacking American assets and American allies around the region? And if they do so, will the US be ready to handle it? Presumably all that will be taken into consideration as to whether they'll go for the military option.
Yes, they will. But Iran is not prepared for war, really. It's prepared for a defensive war of invasion by America, but not against the missile attacks. Nor will it be able to um, do much in halting a real attack by America. But America's not going to make that sort of real attack. And so, therefore, what will happen is that Iran will indeed prepare, but as for attacking American assets, it would be pointless at present because they've still got to deal with their home unrest. And in any case, their key enemy, as they see it, is Israel. And so, therefore, I doubt they will go much further in attacking Americans elsewhere. What they will do is help Russia all the more and ask for Russia to help them. Now that, yes, that's the most disturbing possibility. And that presumably and hopefully Trump will take into account.
Dr. Laskiewicz, thank you very much indeed. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the author and international affairs analyst who was talking to me on the line there from London.